Fantastic. Okay, before we start, can I have like everybody that can find the mute button come off mute and just real quick say hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
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 That is
Hello.
fantastic.
Hello.
Hello.
We appreciate that this got together and re-got together. So we're super excited to be here with you today. So let me start right in, and we're gonna go through a whole bunch of different areas. We're gonna look at a whole bunch of slides. We're going to look at a whole bunch of demos, and my goal is that at the end of this, your head should be spinning. Security is complex. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of different people and different teams and different politics and different agendas that all come together, and they need to work together. The modern super connected individual playthings on the internet world, it's complex. And taking that apart and putting security on top of it and being ready, not just for the next 10 years, but for the next 100 years, takes a lot of work. So Microsoft has a heck of an offering around this. When you start to think about all the different pieces that show up in Microsoft's world, you can think about how it grew. We've got these on-premises data centers, and they may have internet and intranet and different types of clients out there. Hopefully there's somebody up managing it and taking care of the people that are connected into your network. There's a lot of different pieces to how you allow information in, out, around, through your organization. What Microsoft's trying to do is to fill in a lot of different boxes that are the underpinnings of everything that is Microsoft. And there's a lot there, and it takes you quite a long time to get through all the different pieces, because the more you see this picture, the more you start to wonder, just how deep does the rabbit hole go? Well, there's a lot of different pieces. We've got our hybrid cloud infrastructure. We've got our identity. We've got different solutions that protect information and control access. And the deeper you look in this, the more you find it's super complex. There's a lot of different pieces. And the really cool thing and the really dangerous thing is they all work together. So the more of these pieces that you take on, the more capability you'll have. Cool things. Most of this, we can control it with a graph. We can take a bit of JSON text that describes the world that we want to have, and we can throw that against Microsoft Graph and other endpoints and configure a very, very large percentage of the things that need to be done for an organization. But knowing which ones to configure for your organization, that's where the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity come in. When you look at this from Microsoft's point of view, and I'll be fair to both my employer and also to Microsoft, thank you for giving me slides to steal. It's been a busy couple of weeks. There are over 1 billion devices that are using Windows 10. And those devices are all over the globe. They're all connected. Even the ones that aren't connected have information that ends up being shared. And those devices all produce information. All that stuff that we're looking at when we're looking at Azure and looking at Microsoft and looking at security, it all feeds information coming out of those billion devices and uses that information to make decisions about security. So let's start at a really high level. Kind of 4 principles, and we're going to talk through the left 2. We're not going to get too much time to talk through the right 2. But first, accept the cloud. It's happening, and from a identity point of view, if you don't know who you are talking to, or you don't know what they're really supposed to be able to do, it's really hard to function in the cloud world. When people are scattered and they're getting information coming in from different sources, how do you prove that it was actually that person that approved the $1 million transfer? And was it the right person, or did that person just write the check themselves and sign it? By taking this information, bringing it together, you have a set of data sources and then a gigantic information asset that allows you to look at your organization as different interconnected parts. Even within a computer, a lot of complexity. So use the power of the cloud to protect the organization itself, not just your power as an individual computer, or all the computers on your floor, or all the computers in your organization, or all the computers in Microsoft. Bring that information together to help you do this type of work. And then the other part of it that we won't get very deep into, but there are principles of risk that allow you to measure security. And when you're trying to figure out how to pay for it and how to do that type of work, you're already paying for it. You're probably going through plenty of audits that produce plenty of paper. If you can integrate that with your information that we're going to look at today, you can go a long way toward answering those questions in a way that it's just there. So we're going to look at a couple of them. We're going to look at them kind of from a high level point of view, and then we're going to look at how they actually interact with you. Access management, this is one of my fun ones. Like 20, 25 years worth of playing with different access management systems. You find that there's a whole lot of complexity. And when you think about it, the reason that there's complexity is every time a decision is made, does that person get access? There are a whole set of conditions that we can use as information to find out whether or not it's the right person that we're about to give that access. We can look at, are they logged into Azure AD or logged into Google? Do they have Windows Defender information coming up telling us about their device? Do we know their geolocation, and how confident are we? Those conditions all play together with a lot of information that Microsoft's doing. This is information coming in from machine learning, information that is evaluated real time, policies that your organization has set. And it applies those together with some motion indicators. How risky is the session, the thing that's being asked for? And applies a set of controls. Now, I've heard within the last few weeks, Microsoft sessions that are talking about the effectiveness of this particular slide and the conditional access service that's in Azure behind it. It's 98 point something. I don't know, Steve, if you're out there, feel free to jump on and correct me. But over 98% of the different types of attacks can be controlled by putting conditional access, particularly multi-factor, in front of those types of connections. And what you want to be able to do is, regardless of what kind of applications you have, get them into this framework so that you can start to not only manage them, but understand them. So there's a lot that goes into the whole access control. I'm not going to drain any of these. I just want you to know that it's complex. We talk about privileged access and application access and all the different identities that come in and out. This is the stuff that my part of Agile focuses on, is helping you figure out how to secure everything from your end customer clients and consumers to passwordless for employees. You need to figure that stuff out. There's a lot of different pieces that come into it, and we're going to look at a few of them today. So, hopefully It'll let me go back to that when I want to. Let's look a little bit at conditional access. So one of the first things that you find as far as feedback from Security Center, and we'll see if I can drag that away. Is that a big part of the score comes from a very, very simple task. Conditional access allows you to control the access to your cloud apps and even on-prem apps if you know how to wire it together, to make sure that you're using multi-factor appropriately, particularly when it's something like a ServiceNow system where you can go out and request a particular asset. So I've got single sign-on configured for ServiceNow, and if I try to go into ServiceNow again after I log out, it's just going to redirect me and away I go. So as an administrator, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this policy that I've been working on. It's the ServiceNow policy. It applies to all users. Be super careful with all users. All users can do you a lot of damage, particularly if you lock yourself out. Make sure that if you use all users, you pick some individual apps and you have the right kind of controls that'll let you back in. Otherwise, it's a service ticket. I'm going to include all users on this. I'm going to specifically look at the ServiceNow application. And depending on the condition of the connection, I'll make some decisions about whether or not I can grant access. So on ServiceNow, I want to require multi-factor because I want to know that that person is that person before I buy them a laptop. So we'll take this policy here and we'll enable it.
Hey, Drew, can I step just 1 second on that screen and just give a best practice of what we're seeing now, or the new up that most folks don't know around that conditional access around there. So that third checkbox, it says require hybrid Azure AD join device. So Microsoft treats Windows 10 devices now as a mobile device. So we are now recommending that you hybrid Azure AD join your Windows 10 devices into your Azure AD, and you can treat them in these conditional access policies now. So it's an easy way to push updates or do an MFA or deny access if a machine is not managed in your hybrid Azure AD join. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there as a helpful hint, and kind of going forward, that's our default recommendation for Windows 10.
Absolutely. So, and it's a really good segue because I'm not going to talk about devices today as much as I love to talk about devices. But the cool thing is you don't have to do MFA every time. You can do things like have those devices that you trust and use those devices in your rules and create the kind of rules that allow you to give users access to trusted information on the devices and the conditions that you trust. Maybe sometimes you require a little more, and that's what that circle was all about. So I took that policy, I enabled it, I saved it. I'm going to go back to ServiceNow here. I'm going to log out. One of the biggest complaints I hear is, well, what are we going to do? Our users, they're not going to be able to get enrolled. It's actually pretty easy. Once we turn that on, it says, hey, we need some more information here. Your organization needs to keep your account secure. And so I'm going to go ahead and give everybody my phone number. And that's going to be recorded there and probably get picked up by some bot somewhere. And I'm going to have to deal with that. But I think the silly side of security is you get used to it. 13510. So is everybody registering my phone? I appreciate everybody getting on earlier. Hey, I see Mr. Christian.
No, I'm recording it. Yeah, putting it down. It's I've got a script that subscribes you to all kinds of stuff now, Drew.
That's fantastic. And then I have access into ServiceNow. And you can start small. You can start in very specific kind of circumstances and grow your population. But if you're not already doing this, this is the single thing you just must do. There's a lot of other stuff we're going to talk about. A lot of it is super cool. But that whole access control, if you don't control the path in, you don't control the things that people can do. So let's go back and talk a few more slides. Identity is so super important that we have been doing some really, really cool work over the last couple of years, taking and using the power of Power BI and Power Automate and the pieces that really make Microsoft's investment in machine learning a super cool tool for security. Is we're taking out of the box kind of MIM, and we're putting Power BI in front of it in a way that is modern and talks about the kinds of things that you do. If you're not looking at your contractors and managing those accounts and having things like this lower right-hand corner where a certain number of them, get recertified every quarter, year, whatever your security rule for that function is, you got to think about it. Another thing you got to think about is, does your identity tell you things that you need to act on? So can you figure out from identity who's creating rogue accounts or improperly owned AD groups or contractor account renewals? If you're not getting that kind of information out of your identity system, those are the kind of things that you can layer on top of both on-premise and in the cloud Microsoft stacks. It's super important to control the identity and to control that access, because once you have that access, every day Microsoft goes through 6.5 trillion signals. This number just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to become numbers that I can't even remember from math, but it's happening every day, and it's happening fast. And what Microsoft is doing is it's taking all of that signals intelligence and pouring it into a suite of products that some of them go back, like I've worked with what's now MIM for almost 20 years. And some of them are literally lighting up, this week, last quarter, next year. All of those are producing these signals that, particularly through using modern authentication, we can analyze and we can use them to do things. So the thing that we're talking about right now, we're talking about zero trust. The idea behind zero trust is something that hopefully you'll walk away with. First thing, never trust, always verify. Never trust, always verify. This is a really hard thing. I worked with an organization that sells a software product. It costs $1 billion. They wanted to protect it very, very carefully, because all of the stuff that it does is IP, and they wanted to move it to the cloud so that they'd have more control over it. And I said, well, first thing, the basic and integrated auth's got to go. What? Oh, modern auth. Never trust, always verify. To do things like that, pop up the register your device or register for multi-factor. You've got to have the ability to do that verify. That's implicit in number one. Number two, assume every resource is on the open internet. No matter what you do, somebody out there is watching. You have attackers in every scenario. If you don't believe that, go put a VM out on Azure for a couple of days and put Windows Active Directory on it and leave the firewall ports open and just watch what happens. It's a very quick, easy honeypot that anybody can do. Just to be a little careful, the cost can get way out of hand. The last thing is the identity. It really is the control plane. if you can't agree on what that identity is and can do at all the different endpoints out there in the globe that they can do those things, whether it's approving that invoice or starting a machine with, million degree molten everything, then in a modern cloud IoT kind of world, you're going to have a lot of trouble. You need to be able to trust but verify. So a couple of things that are going on with this, just some key takeaways. Segmented networks, they're breaking apart. When you look at this from Microsoft's point of view, the micro segmentation that goes on with all the different Azure tenants in all the different places, it's a lot of different networks. All that information comes together. So instead of local logs that you'd have to go and look on that machine, now what we're doing is we're bringing that information in. How much is it for you? For Microsoft, it's 6.5 T and keeps getting bigger. Inferred trust, and let me say this again: if you have service accounts that are sitting out there on machines and can do anything that they want, you have a problem. We're getting to a point where we need to be able to do explicit verification and control. The frequency at which we get new customers that have already been attacked, it's going up, and it's going up quickly. From a reactive response to an automated one, and from these walled gardens, silos, whatever you choose to call them, to something that's more modern and particularly something that's more mobile, because I think we've all been through a lot the last few weeks and learned that if it wasn't for mobility, we could not respond the way that we do. So it's super important. There's a whole lot that goes into this when we look at some of these solutions, and I'm only going to be able to go so deep today, and I'm more than happy to go deeper. There's a lot of different stuff going on. We've got unusual activity going on. We've got artificial intelligence going on. All of these things, they need to come together. Some of the first feedback that I heard working with Microsoft security solutions, early in their life cycle, was, oh my gosh, there's so many portals. Well, you'll see there are a lot of portals. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff that has to come together to be able to collect security at cloud scale from any source and bring that security together and turn it into intelligible, meaningful, actionable things. The last thing you want is a computer telling you what to do. Think about it with your workforce. You could have this situation where computers are asking you to do thousands of things that mean nothing to the business or the organization and what they need to do. So let's look at some more tools. So a lot of this stuff is coming together. You'll find, I think a couple of presenters have already said that you just wait a week, it changes on you. You know how you know there's a new service, it pops up in a portal somewhere. There are a lot of capabilities in security. Microsoft's putting a whole lot of investment in bringing big chunks of that into the Microsoft 365 security portal. We're only going to look at a very high level of this because there's a whole bunch to look at, but the default dashboard, when you've only had your tenant up for a few days, it still has a lot of information, and depending on what you've lit up and what data you're ingesting and what connections you're using, it's going to make suggestions on this home that are meaningful kind of things. Hey, do you use ServiceNow? Yeah, actually I do use ServiceNow. So I can, go right into that and make my connection. Don't make fun of Secure Score. It gets better and better every day. We have a piece of our organization that actually does hardcore regulatory compliance. And they have a lot of opinions on just how well Microsoft's bringing this information together and using things like regulations and tying it to the things that can be done in Azure and in O365, and then tying it into things that, as security professionals, we can do, we can act on. I've got an active alert here that's coming from, I'll have to go and see where that alert came from, that's telling me that something's going on with my system. Something was definitely going on with my system. All right, so we'll look at those alerts here. And I can see there was some suspicious activity, and what was happening on this machine here, Pradeep. And I could go deeper and look at it in the security center. So this is the Microsoft Defender. It is not the Defender that is just an antivirus. This is all the EDR stuff that it does. It's all the incident response stuff that it does. It allows you to actually manage alerts and things that go on from a security point of view. You can look at a timeline of a machine and see what's been going on with that machine, see when different types of events, depending on what kind of information you're getting, you can see, individual memory types of things that are going on a particular machine. And all that telemetry that comes out of Windows and Microsoft products and every other product that writes to the event log gives you the ability to make decisions. And I didn't really actually want to do that. To make decisions about these machines and to do things with them. So for example, I can restrict the app execution. And basically what this will do is this will take that machine and take it off the network. Some things will work, like your ability to make a Teams call, a support call, and email will work. But basically everything else that isn't signed by Microsoft, it's not going to run. So real-time incident response to things that are going on our machines. I'll look at one of these here. So this was a pretty cool one. One of the things you learn when you do Defender is how to trigger these things and make them happen. In this case, there's a nice little Word document, and that Word document kicks off a PowerShell, and the PowerShell results in investigation information that we can use. Here's my suspicious PowerShell command line and information about it. And here's what's actually going on the machine at that point in time. If I wanted to, I could collect that file. I could consult a threat expert. I can make actions based on the information that is coming off of the antivirus and the EDR, the different types of sensors that are sending telemetry up to Microsoft that are used for this solution. So it's really, really cool stuff. We're working with more and more devices and more types of programs every day. There's a really cool demo that we do where it looks at a file as it goes out onto Tor and bounces off of all those nodes. A lot of visualization heavy work went into Defender. And it really will make a difference in terms of being able to manage security events that are happening in every organization every day. So that's kind of the different devices that are out there point of view. The other point of view that's important is an app. So we use lots of apps. In this case, I've got O365 and SharePoint Online and Exchange Online and OneDrive and Azure, and I've got a whole bunch of different stuff that I'm managing. What Cloud App Security allows us to do is to stand in the chain and make decisions on the cloud applications. Like, for example, that ServiceNow connection that I was making, making requirements about what can be attached to a particular incident, or if I want to, do a little bit of shadow IT and upload something to a box. How do we manage that, and how do we bring that all together? This piece focuses a lot on DLP and detecting information. So, for example, there was a file containing PCI detected in the cloud. It was an Excel file, and it's stored out here in SharePoint. And I've got a policy, and that policy says when you've got a file containing PCI information, and here's the information that matched it, and there's a pattern detector that matches that policy and says, hey, file going on to SharePoint Online, file going on to Box, file going into the Google Cloud, file going wherever, that matches this type of PCI information, we need to do something with it. In this case, maybe we quarantined it, or we limited who had access to it until it was resolved. This particular one isn't resolved. So if the external person that Megan tried to send this to tried to access that link, they wouldn't be able to until the resolution actually occurs on that particular risk. So it's a very powerful way to control a lot of the shadow IT that's going on. When we think about organizations, and how many different applications are currently available and useful through the cloud, that problem's only going to get bigger and bigger. So tools like this allow you to not just control, things coming in and out of your email, but things coming in and out of the organization, things coming in and out of all the different types of connections and applications that we use. One of the cool things it does is it ties into the Microsoft information protection. So, for example, one of the things you could do is have a rule that says, if it has any of the following types of company confidential information, go ahead and wrap that thing in encryption, track it, only allow access to it for 3 days, and whatever the rest of the rules are using Microsoft information protection. So this is tied into a lot of the other pieces that we're going to see. Threat protection. I think we already, we did. I'm going to do that one again. Talk a little bit about security and compliance. So security and compliance gives us trends about overall how we're doing for information protection. This is where we have things like our sensitivity labels. So the piece that I talked about that, identify your PII or identify your very secret project Falcon. These are managed here. So again, another portal, there's quite a bit of them. What Microsoft's doing is it's kind of taking the standard picture for most organizations for security, bringing it here to the security homepage. But when you really need to, integrate your organization from a security operations center, a SOC type of point of view, you need a lot more horsepower and you need a lot more information. And that's what Sentinel is all about. So Sentinel has been a whole lot of fun. The last time I was in Redmond last fall, it was still building steam, but it's amazing just how far it's come and how fast. What Sentinel allows you to do is to take all of this different information about what's happening in your organization and who's got access to what, and bring that information together into a tool that's going to allow you to visualize it, to make decisions and determine what kinds of things need to be handled automatically or by this person, and ties it into the Azure fabric in a way that allows the Microsoft stuff. And here's my big takeaway with Sentinel. Some of the information that you ingest into Sentinel, and that's how it costs. Some of that information is free. A lot of that is information that you can act on today. So understanding, what you can kind of do, that bit's a little bit priceless and takes you a little bit of learning. But just in a couple of hours, you can build enough of a Sentinel to start responding to some serious kind of things. So I put a few things into my Sentinel. This data connectors is probably a good place to start. Data connectors bring you information. So I have data connectors here for Azure AD and identity protection and Azure Activity Security Center. So I went and just plugged it into everything I could find. Here's the Office one. These plug-in connections give you different information and the ability to bring that information into incidents and actually respond to them. I can see, how much data I've ingested and how long that data's been ingested and how old it is. So the key is it takes a lot of effort to go out and do a security investigation. You don't want things popping off for absolutely any kind of reason. You want the ability to make machine decisions and human decisions together in, kind of a synchrony. So what we do is we take this information that comes in and it walks you through how to connect it and gives you some next steps about that information. And it can even give you some samples here. So if I wanted to go and look at what's all the information that's coming in from Defender. Getting your data. All right. So there's a lot of information that's coming in from Defender here. There's 161 different items according to the information that's pulled in since I lit that one up. They give us different alert severity, so that'll be helpful. I could, for example, say, and alert severity not equal to low. Because I only want to look at the medium things or I don't want the informational either. I want the things that I can actually act on and do something. Oh, here's an interesting one. This is not a low event. So it's information that I've got coming in from Defender. So these are the events that are in Defender that are in that other portal that used to be a bit of a problem, and now not so much. And it's bringing those information sources together in a way that allows us to make decisions based on that. So I can, when I get to the point where I've got the type of event that I'm looking for, I think it's looking for, suspicious. And alert name contains, Custo is pretty cool. This is the query language that I'm using. There's lots of stuff out there in GitHub in Custo that you can use to search your organization and do security kind of analysis. So I want to look for suspicious. So this will create, I'm going to create a new alert here. This is an Azure Sentinel alert. This is going to be my new alert. Set rule logic on it. Set different settings about incidents. And because I'm getting really close on time, I'm not going to give you everything. It'll give you validation and other information. It'll tell you when you fail like I did. And then you can use that guidance to help you get through this, or go ahead and get some help. Playbooks, I do at least want to talk about playbooks a little bit. What playbooks allow us to do is to use logic apps. And if you've been watching the sessions today, you'll see a whole lot of different things about logic apps and different places where they're used. So whenever I get an Azure Security Center alert, I'm going to send an email. It's going to have the alert display name and which entity was compromised. This is going to generate a whole lot of emails, but luckily we can figure that out later. And I'm also going to create an incident in ServiceNow. So a whole lot of power, a whole lot of ability to, based on those events, make decisions, based on what decisions are made, create apps and workflows that actually go out and help get the right people involved, open up a Teams channel, whatever you need to do in your playbook, so that people can work through these incidents and get them resolved. So I'll give just a couple more slides and then we'll thank you all so much for coming and for coming on the line earlier. I appreciate hearing all your voices and wish you all well. This has been a lot of fun. On protecting information assets, do not forget about the importance of software and the importance of security and the importance of those working together. DevOps is super cool. I've had this project I've been working on for 2.5 years to build MIM in the DevOps world, and it is absolutely something that you need to do. If you do your DevOps and you don't do security along with it, if you don't build those together, it's a lot harder to put that on the back end. So there's a lot of work to do. I didn't even talk about encryption. And that's what this slide first really started working about. But you can protect your information, detect information, set rules that if it's got credit card numbers in it, encrypt it. If it's on the desktop or in the cloud or wherever it is, and manage that information. The point on this one, software is a security system. And if you do it well, you can define, here's all my Azure resources, here's all my code, here's all my installation, here's my SharePoint config. It all comes together, it gets checked into a Git. And we're doing identity now as a DevOps solution because that way you can manage the drift and you can keep things in line. Again, DevOps. If you put these security controls in and you have some human switching the knobs, you will forget why they said it that way. With DevOps, you'll be able to see how was it set, when's the last time it was set, when's the last time it went to prod, get all that information together in one place with history and tracking and things that security really loves to have. Risk management, not even going to talk about that at all today, other than to say, hey, there's lots of rules out there, and take those rules into account when you design security, because there's actually cost savings opportunities when you find ways to make audits go away. Lots of portals. First one to remember is security.microsoft.com. 2 seconds about Agile. We've been working with Microsoft. I've been here about 10 years. Agile's been working with Microsoft for most of our 20 years. We were 2020 Security System Integrator of the Year this year, and we really love the opportunity to come and present to the Omaha folks. It's been a very long time since we've done that, and we certainly appreciate the invite today and thank everybody for their time. And I hope you all have a fantastic and safe day.